Ah, cosplay. This is what the world sees. But realistically, us makers know that there's a lot more steps than just a finished product. So in today's video, I would like to break down for you the steps that I take when I am starting to approach a new project, and then show you how I build upon those to get to the finished product. Because we never start like this. Realistically, it's more like this. A bit more bare, isn't it? So the very first step of any cosplay build is probably the one that is a bit of a nada kind of moment, and that is to choose your cosplay. So you may very well find your first reference image. Check that out! That's what I'm going to create! So now that you've chosen your cosplay, I'm going to pass you over to VoiceOver Curly, who's going to walk you through the next couple of steps. Over to you, VoiceOver Curly.
The first thing you're going to do is get reference images. Notice the plural. Use your Google Foo or the pause button when watching the costume in action to find as many reference images of the cosplay as you can. Extra points for any back shots you may find. Once you have these, compile them together. It should give you a bit of an idea of what the entire cosplay should look like, though with some you'll have to do a bit of guessing. Like mine doesn't have any back shots, but there is enough information from the front and the side shots to have a good idea of what's happening in the back. Then you pick one main reference image. I mean this. Don't try to recreate every image because especially if it's drawn, there are small differences, and believe me, these small differences will drive you insane. The first thing you need to do is figure out the silhouette. For Ariel here, I can see the bodice is fitted and off the shoulder. The sleeves are in two parts, with the upper being voluminous and the bottom being fitted, and the skirt is somewhere between an A-line and a ball gown skirt. Once you've figured out the silhouette, you will need to break it down into layers. But before you even start on the main cosplay, you will need to figure out what shoes you're going to wear. If the cosplay has heels, you will need to take that height difference into consideration for the construction of the cosplay. This is the only time in the video I will be mentioning this point, so please take note. Then we start on the main layers. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, as I want to actually show you this cosplay's layers with my own costume. But basically, the first layer is to get that silhouette, and then the following layers is to build upon that until you get to the finishing touches of accessories. Now, back to the live me.
Thanks so much for that, VoiceOver Curly, and welcome back to a live version of me. So now that you've figured out your silhouette and the layers that you need, what we're going to do is we're going to apply it to my example of my Ariel costume. Let's start off with layer number 1, the Kremlin. Okay, so layer number 1, the Kremlin, is on my dress form. And the reason why this is my number 1 is because of the fact that it's my structural shape. Now, if I was also going to be wearing a corset or something like that to cinch me in and give me that really defined waist, I might also want to use a corset. And the same goes that if I was going to create some kind of crazy kind of overcoat thing that was flowing, I would add some kind of crazy shoulder rack thing happening. But in this case, it was all pretty straightforward. It was just the Kremlin to help me give the support that I needed to the layers that go on top of this, to give that real bell kind of shape. So saying that, because I have the Kremlin, what I actually need to do next is I need to have something that goes over the top of it so that it doesn't have all of these kind of lines so harshly poking through onto the overskirt. So that brings us to our petticoat. And voila, our layer 2 is now on the dress form and over the Kremlin. And so no longer can you see those really harsh lines of the hoops. Though I have learned that if you're in very strong winds, you will see the hoops. But if you're standing still, it's fine. And the thing about this second layer is that we have finally got the first layer, which is seen in some of the reference images, which is that little kick, that little ruffle of the sparkly net. See, we start working it all together. The other thing about this layer is that I didn't actually do any kind of mock-up for this. I did do a mock-up for the Kremlin, and that was kind of roughly to figure out what kind of sizing I needed the hoops. If you check out my how to make a Kremlin video, you will see that, at least a little clip of it, at the very start. But because this is just a stock standard sort of petticoat shape that I have made something similar previously, I knew I had a pattern that I could use, so I just went ahead and worked with that. So see, you don't have to mock up every single section, especially if you've done something similar to it before. Right, time to move on to layer number 3. Layer number 3 is the skirt. Now this is fitting a little bit strangely on my dress form because I've got a wider waist than my dress form here, but this will sit right on my waist. And the thing about this is that it is a circle skirt that I wasn't quite sure how to kind of put it together and how much I needed to take from the waist to get it fit properly. So I did a mock-up version of this skirt, and then I cut it out of the real fabric and kind of made it all together. I left the gemstones till later because that's all detailing, but I made this before I moved on to the next step, because layer 4 has its own little skirt, and I figured I could use the same mock-up fabric because it's roughly the same shape, but just alter it so that I didn't have to waste fabric. Let's bring out layer 4 now. And here we have layer 4. This was the most complicated layer of this costume because of the fact that there was the bodice, and then there was the sleeves, which I had to mock up as well. So I mocked up the bodice, mocked up the sleeves, and then the overskirt was actually directly attached to the bodice. So what I did was I had to mock up every single aspect of this last layer, and it took a while, but it is the majority of the costume that you see. So keep that in mind when you're trying to rationalize, should I do a mock-up of this? And frankly, if you're ever going to do a bodice, I would highly recommend that you do a mock-up, because where a large skirt may like flare out, as long as you've got the waist, you're pretty much okay. But if you are going to do a bodice, you want to make sure that that is fitting in every which way that you need it to fit. Now, I did say that that was the last layer, but realistically, there is one more layer to go, and that is accessories. In this case, the only part of layer 5 that you can see actually on the costume is this little shell brooch that I've got here. But I also made shoes and a wig and earrings to go with this costume. These things are just add-ons, extras if you will, to your costume. It doesn't actually have any kind of correlation to the rest of your outfit. They're just finishing touches, much like all of the gemstones that I put on here as well. Basically, the accessories just make it look all polished, make it look beautiful. But if they're not there, it's not going to ruin the structure of your overall garment. That's why they should always be done last. So in short, there are 3 key things that I want you to take away from this video. Number 1, start with a reference image and get as many different reference images that you can, including the ever elusive back shots. Step number 2, make sure that before you even start breaking down the cosplay into its layers and figuring what fabrics and materials you're going to use, have a look at the silhouette and figure out if you're going to need any supporting layers first and foremost to get that silhouette correct. And step number 3, break everything into layers. Work from the layer that is closest to your body out, and generally speaking, it will be from bottom up. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and hopefully it helps you when you're tackling your next project. I would also like to dedicate this video to my amazing patrons. You guys are amazing, you support me, I love you, and if you too would like to see the behind the scenes shots of my work in progress and all the craziness that I get up to, then you can be a close friend on my Instagram. All you have to do is become a patron. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my $10 a month tier patrons, who are Justine Ghosty, Rogue Threads, Andrea Halusco, and Sapsoro Revealed. Thank you all so much for joining me on this little video, this little adventure if you will. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give us a like and leave us a comment below. It really helps me with the algorithm. And make sure that you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video. I'll see you all later. Bye!